Now, let's look at the Socratic Method. So it's unfortunate, this is, I mentioned in my intro video that there are some weaknesses, some benefits, and some negatives to an online class. This is one of the negatives, is that I have to tell you about the Socratic Method. We can't engage in it. So in my face-to-face class, of course, I can tell you, and then we can engage in it, and we can look at examples. The Socratic Method requires a real person. You can't engage in the Socratic Method by yourself or just through a video. But I can tell you what it is, and you can learn how to engage with it. So, more or less, the Socratic Method is a method of dialogue where there is usually one person who is more knowledgeable, who has more expertise, and there are other people who are knowledgeable, but they're sort of, debating this person, and they might even be challenging the person with more expertise. But that's exactly why he has more expertise, because he knows how to deal with those challenges. She knows how to handle those questions, whoever it is. But the idea, and this is very important to remember with the Socratic Method, the idea of the discussion is not just to debate and be right, it's to find the truth together. So it is a mutual process. And it doesn't have to be two, it could be 3 or 4 people. I mean, it could be theoretically a group of people. Theoretically, it could be a classroom where it's not an individual person who's proposing ideas, but it's various students around the classroom coming up with similar ideas and contributing to the discussion. But again, I want to point out that the bottom line is figuring out the truth, is having a respect for the evidence and the reasons, and a desire not to be biased, a desire to be aware of and be open to being wrong, to being open-minded. This is all a requirement of Socratic discussion, Socratic Method. So you can probably see that this is not the sort of discussion that you get on a YouTube video, or even, in many Senate meetings in the U.S. Senate. Socratic Method is hard to do, it takes effort, and it, like I said, it takes a respect for other people in the conversation, even if you disagree with them, and it takes the ability to listen and to really be vigilant over your own reasoning process. That's what it takes to truly have a conversation where you meet with someone and you hear them and you contribute openly to the conversation. So that's the Socratic Method. Now, the way you can tell you're in the Socratic Method sometimes is, if you've ever been in a conversation and you find yourself saying something like, well, no, wait, that's not what I meant. Wait, no, I meant this. That means that you appreciate that you're in a conversation where you're being listened to, and you're trying to refine what you said so that the other person has a deeper understanding, right? They might say, well, wait, I thought you said socialism is this. And you say, no, by socialism, this is what I mean. That's the Socratic Method, is sort of refining terms and definitions and sharpening, honing, clarifying new concepts together. And Socrates was so good at this, he made people mad. And it wasn't by choice, but he would often begin the conversation by asking a lot of questions. And sometimes people make the mistake of assuming that someone who asks questions doesn't know anything, right? That's a huge misunderstanding in this world. People who ask questions are people who are probably going to be very successful, because, especially if they're listening to the answers, because that means they're guiding their life based on new information they're learning, rather than assuming that they know it all to begin with. So Socrates did that, and he would ask questions, and by the end of the conversation, and this is where the irony comes in, by the end of the conversation, he was the one who looked intellectually superior. It wasn't by design, that wasn't his point, but he would often reveal the ignorance of the other person just by asking the right questions, just by really challenging their true knowledge, and the person would come out basically as a sophist. They thought they knew all these things, they thought they knew what justice is or truth is or whatever, and Socrates would show them that, man, you didn't know much at all. And so that's the irony. Irony, by the way, is one of those terms that we often think we know the meaning to, but it's hard to put into words. To put it simply, it's often just when something has a double meaning, right? It seems one way and it turns out another. And that's why it's ironic with Socrates, because it seems like he's the ignorant one, when he asks questions. Well, what do you mean by the truth, or whatever? But by the end, it's clear that he was the wise one. So that's often the irony. And then there's also the presumption in the Socratic Method that we know things intuitively that has to be brought out with the right questioning. So this is where you often hear that a good teacher is somebody who knows how to ask the right questions.